There's something I'm seeing right now in talking to contractors, remodelers, roofers, anyone from the home improvement industry, which is every time a customer calls me right now, the first thing they ask me is how long it's going to take to get my project completed. So if you find yourself in the same boat where you're pushing jobs out, 6 to 12 months, whether it's due to those, labor shortages that we talked about last week, probably more so on the material shortages front where, lumber is just an asinine price right now. You have to figure out a way to keep that customer satisfied during that so-called dark period. And if you heard the podcast a few weeks ago, I shared a episode of the Tim Fowler podcast where our CEO Chris Beisch got on there to talk about how we're seeing customers solve this. And I wanted to actually dive in a little bit more into that and literally give you some strategies on this podcast that you can use today to start keeping those customers satisfied. At the end of the day, let's be honest, you're probably taking 50% of the project costs right now up front and then going to get delivered 50% on the back end. So I would think, a couple $1,000s, which is typically that first 50%, like I feel like that would entitle the homeowner just to get a little bit of communication, to get talked to a little bit. So in this podcast today, we're going to talk about some of those strategies that you can employ and keep your customer satisfied, no matter how long their project is booked out.
You've got to be adaptable. You've got to find a way to accommodate an uncomfortable customer.
If you're not getting the home advisor leads in the first 5 minutes, you shouldn't even do it.
Hopefully we're eating their lunch while they're trying to get back up and running.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Matt here with Hatch and another episode of Built By. So there's two things I want to address at the beginning of this so you can start to understand, I guess, the psychology of what goes into this dark period. Number one is I don't know if you had a chance to listen back to that Tim Fowler podcast where our CEO, Chris Beisch, was featured just to talk about the dark period and how our customers are solving it. But great episode. At the beginning, Tim said something that really got my thoughts going on this, which is a book he had been reading. And I can't remember which one or who the author was, but there was a quote that stuck out to him, which is, in the absence of knowledge, people will make up their own facts. I'm sure you've experienced this. It's something that I think everyone at some point, if you aren't told what's going on, you probably start to make up your own idea of what's happening. I think that's probably the main problem with social media these days, Twitter, Facebook, and that sort of thing. It's that absence of knowledge. And that's why it's so important for you to stay in contact with the homeowner from the minute that the sale is signed all the way through to project completion, because if you're not talking to them, they're going to make up their own facts. And if we've seen anything from Twitter or Facebook, it's not usually a good thing. Number two is actually something, if you pull out your old textbook from high school psychology, you'll find this in there. It's one of the main biases. And I don't know if you've remember those biases or if you've gone back and look at them, but I think they're fascinating to me because these are things that, Sigmund Freud and other psychologists talked about so long ago that actually apply to business today. And the more that you know these, I think the more that you can kind of leverage them to your business's benefit. And this concept is confirmation bias. And this is one I've wrote about. This is one I've been reading about a lot, which is so fascinating to me. It's this, I think it's honestly one of the main problems with society today, but that's for another podcast. But basically, confirmation bias is people form an opinion within the first, 1 to 2 seconds, whether they like it or they hate it. After they come to this conclusion, every single piece of evidence they see passes through this semi-filter in their brain. So it's either supports that conclusion they came up with, in which case they 100% agree with it, repost it, buy from it, they agree with it, right? The other thing is they'll dismiss it or they'll hate it and they'll never do it again. You probably had the same conclusion when it came to this podcast, right? Like you listen to the first few seconds to determine if what I was saying was knowledgeable and if this offered you value. And if so, you probably listened to a few other episodes or didn't at all. Probably not listening to this right now, but I keep honing in on these things because if you look at Some of the biggest companies of our time, so I'm talking about like Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, Amazon, Jeff Bezos, they all minored in psychology. It actually matters when you're building a business to know these biases so you can apply them and get the most out of what you're doing now. So now we've got these two things in mind, and hopefully this kind of set the foundation, which is number one, in the absence of knowledge, people make up shit. They start to make their own decisions, opinions about what's happening. Number two, if you're not giving them an excellent experience, they're going to filter out all of the positive things that happen, and they're going to start to hate your business and start spreading bad news about it. So hopefully this kind of lays the foundation of what the dark period is and why you should be paying more attention to this, especially right now. Business is really good. It's not going to be this good forever. In fact, I'm talking to like a lot of businesses that are hoping things actually slow down so they can get these projects completed that they have booked out so long. But by mastering this right now and really honing in on that customer communication piece during this dark period when jobs are booked out, you're going to be able to grow your pipeline out further because you're going to get more referrals because customers were satisfied with the job, and you're going to get more reviews because people were satisfied with the job. That customer satisfaction piece of this is 100x right now because, again, we talked about it earlier. People are giving you a deposit down for this job. They're not even going to be able to see it. It's the same thing as like buying a car, putting 50% down, and then a year later, you get to actually put the rest down and drive it. So by nailing this right now, you're setting yourself up for the next 3, 5, 10 years. And that's why I think this is such an important topic. So I'm going to go ahead and give these strategies to you right now. If you go to our blog, use hatchapp.com/blog. We actually wrote about this, I think, a few weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago. And you can actually copy and paste from that blog and use the communication in your current customer communication. So there's specific times to send these things. That's all covered there. Again, use hatchapp.com/blog. I think the article is called Messaging Templates for Better Customer Experiences. So let's start number one with appointment confirmations. This is a strategy I've been seeing companies start to employ, not only during this like crazy COVID pandemic and all this stuff. This was actually something that companies started doing probably a year or two ago, which is sending out confirmations of an appointment before either the sales rep gets there or the installers arrive. This is just something that's easily overlooked, but it adds such like a personal touch to these things. So, a few days before the appointment runs, just send a text out to the homeowner and say, hey, I'm excited about our appointment on a date and time. I just wanted to confirm this time is still good for you. By making it a few days in advance and not like same day or an hour before, it actually shows that you're proactive in thinking about how important this is for them. So just start sending that appointment confirmation text like, 2 or 3 days before. You could send one an hour before. That's fine, as long as you establish that it's not something that like popped up in your CRM and you're like, oh shit, I have to text these people. Giving them, a few days in advance makes it seem like you're actually paying attention to what's going on, which I'm sure you are, but things are crazy right now. And really, it all comes down to that top of mind thing, like staying top of mind on your customers and making them think that they're top of mind for you as well. This next one's a big one that I think a lot of people aren't doing, but I'm going to say that more companies are going to start doing this because we're seeing that with our customers. They're starting to use this campaign on a lot of their text messaging. And this one is more of a repeatable touch. And this is something that I think will take the bulk of this dark period communication, which is basically like a nurture strategy. Like you're staying top of mind with customers. You're nurturing them with content that you hopefully have kind of going in the background. So there's a few ways to approach this one. Number one is repeatable. You can do this as many times as you want, but it's more of a product update, right? If you're getting a specific type of siding, you have to order it from James Hardie or something like that. Just keep the customer updated, whether that stuff's arrived or not. Something as simple as maybe like every 2 weeks, just sending out a text and saying like, hey, this is Matt from Hatch Exteriors. We haven't received your products in yet, but I just wanted to say that we're really excited about the job. I'll let you know any more updates as they come through. I mean, that's the Amazon experience, right? This is something that my co-founder Chris and Tim Fowler talked about in that podcast, but like I can order some deodorant randomly on Amazon. I'll get up-to-date notifications when that deodorant leaves Louisville. I'll get a picture of it when it arrives on my doorstep. I get a text message that says, hey, your deodorant's been dropped off. I think by giving this experience to like homeowners when it comes to these higher consideration, higher dollar purchases, is going to set you apart so much from every other company that's out there. Obviously, Hatch automates this stuff, but if you have somebody internally, maybe you can hire like a niece or a nephew or something to like actually do this and just keep an eye on when products are being delivered. Just provide that information to your customers. Like, it's not a crazy concept. It's not a hard thing to pull off. It's just you need the bodies to do it. It's going to take your customer experience to the next level. The other ways to do this are, sending them nurture material. So if you have a blog, hopefully you have a blog, hopefully you have a marketing person that's putting some stuff out there, some content, just offering that content. If there's any videos of projects you recently completed, send that to the homeowner, get them excited about the job that's coming up. There's so many ways for you to kind of nail this. And I hope you're like kind of thinking of some of these things on your own right now. Hopefully this has got your like mind jogging about how you can solve this. But after that sale is made, before the install happens, like just communicate, just give stuff to your customer, make them feel like you actually care about them. That's what it boils down to at the end of the day. So a good back end when you actually do receive those products is scheduling an install. So you probably have this laid out already. If so, you might just want to do kind of an install reminder. Just say, hey, this is Matt from Hatch Exteriors. We just received your products in-house. Maybe take a picture, maybe send it along with the text or hopefully a text. I was going to say email, but you should be texting all these things. But email's fine too. They probably won't see it, but text is the golden way to kind of solve this right now. But yeah, so just send them an update and say, hey, looking forward to the install that's happening XYZ. Install reminders. So this is another thing. We talked about this a little while ago about the appointment reminders, but install reminders. Usually the project manager isn't there with the team on site. So I think it's important to kind of establish that fact up front. Text them and say, hey, our team is ready to get to work with you on that roofing project we had discussed. We're coming out date and time to start work. This type of project typically takes 1 to 2 weeks. I will not be joining the install team on the day of the project, but text me back at this number if you have any questions or if you need me to come out for any specific reasons. I'm still your resource here and I will answer any questions you have. Something simple like that, just so they know they have a main point of contact. And this is going to make your install team much happier because, as Tim Fowler put it a few weeks ago, like the homeowner's not going to be out there counting nails. They'll have somebody to gripe to or somebody to talk to. And having a single point of communication solves so many problems inside of your business. The last thing is actually something on the back end. And some companies are starting to do this. And I think it's because it's a lot easier for them to manage. And it's that accounts receivable part. So after the job's completed, maybe a few days after it's completed, you can reach out with a text and say, hey, hope you've enjoyed working with us. Please leave us a review. By the way, if you want to complete your payment, feel free to click this link, just drop a link in there and pay that outstanding bill. So I kind of ran through all these strategies, but again, this is like, it's something you need to start considering to implement right now because it's only going to serve you better in the long run. And I think a lot of businesses right now are too worried about short term. You got to be able to leverage this huge boom that the remodeling industry is having right now in a long-term capacity. And how you do that is by treating your customers right and giving them an experience they deserve. And I think by implementing these strategies, you're going to start to see a much better return on that investment right now. So that's all I've got for today, y'all. Thanks so much for tuning in. I have a blast talking about these things, and I hope it's something that kind of gets your brain jogging and gets you thinking about how you can improve your business. That's really all I want at the end of the day. So I've got my phone number on these. It's actually connected to a Hatchboard, so you can text me, you can call me, leave me a voicemail. That number is 804-494-5275. Again, that's 804-494-5275. If you have any questions, any feedback, shoot me a text, leave me a voicemail. If you have a question via voicemail, I'll actually record it and play it on this podcast, and then I'll get a guest to answer it. Let me know. Like, I want to make this more interactive, more feedback, answer any questions that you have. Maybe one day we'll do a live show, but we'll see about that. In the meantime, thanks so much for tuning in, y'all. Until next time.